Welcome to the Live Courageously podcast show, number 22 of 2023. I'm your host, John Duffy, and this is the 37th Live Courageously podcast show since I started the show a year and a half ago. Today is Father's Day, so a shout out to all those courageous fathers who have stepped up as dads and as positive role models for their kids. Courage is the first of all human qualities because it is the one quality which guarantees all the others. So Live Courageously has been the conscious theme of my life for the last 3 years, since the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, and an unconscious theme for most of my life. And if you haven't seen the previous 36 podcasts with some of my amazing, courageous friends sharing their positive and powerful stories of overcoming all odds and going on to live powerful lives and making a difference in the world, you can watch them on my John Duffy Live Courageously YouTube channel. I have another 75 plus friends planned to be guests on my future shows. So please subscribe to my Live Courageously YouTube channel, that Duff Square Film, and keep coming back every Sunday at 2 p.m. Today, my friend and guest is Joe Ramirez, and Joe is a consultant, an author, a speaker, a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, a pastor, a chaplain, a musician, and the founder and CEO of Betstream TV. His military activities included 8 years as a military police investigator at the United States Marine Corps. He served as a military policeman in North Carolina, Southern California, Okinawa, Japan, and Korea, and spent the last 3 years of military service as a traffic and homicide investigator. His corporate profit affiliations include being the president and co-founder of Command Guard Services, the CEO and president and managing director of Partner Blue Eye Monitoring, and the CEO and owner at Pacific National Security. His nonprofit affiliations and services include the following: Director of Operations at Claire Matrix, an addiction and recovery inpatient and outpatient service. He pastor and a volunteer at Sober Living at Harmony Place. Executive board member at Ronald Reagan Palisades Post American Legion 283, a chief operating officer at the American Legion in Palisades. He's also the chaplain over there at American Legion Palisades as well. He's the pastor of Revive LA Church. And presently, Joe is a chief executive officer of Betstream TV, an online subscription-based streaming service with a focus on veteran-affiliated content, including shorts, features, and documentaries. Joe, welcome to the show. Greetings, brother. Thank you for joining me today on Father's Day.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And Joe is also a father, so taking time to, as is I myself. So we're both taking time away on our Father's Day to do this show. So thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So tell me, Joe, take us through your journey. Where did you start out? And take us, up into your involvement in the U.S. Marine Corps. Why did you join, and what was that experience like? And we're going to kind of, go through your life a little bit. But before we do that, I just remembered the two questions I like to ask is, where did we first meet, if you remember?
I thought we met because we connected online because of your movie. Is it called The Flag?
Correct.
Right. I think that's how we connected, because at the time I was running a theater that my wife and I had owned, the theater company, and we were looking for, ways to use that theater, and that's how we connected to show that movie.
Yeah, and I remember attending your theater. I think it was Santa Monica Boulevard, and you were doing an event for showing some movies from victims of communism. And some documentaries. And I think that might have been the first, maybe it wasn't the first time, but that was one of the times we met over at your theater over there.
Well, your memory is definitely better than mine, because now that you say that, I remember it now. Also, too, we connected a couple of times, even in some ways by accident, over at the Hollywood Post, through an event where they had, can't remember his name now for whatever reason, but the actor who's very supportive of vets, and you look like him, John Voight.
Oh, John Voight. That's right. We did go to an event when John Voight was over there. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, they say that he looks like my brother, or I look like his brother. We're kind of still debating who looks like whose brother, but yeah, great guy. And well, the second question I like to ask is, what does Live Courageously mean to you, Joe?
I got to tell you, it's interesting that you even asked that, because I was just thinking with one of my, before I got going on sharing about myself, I wanted to say to you that I really like the title of your podcast, and that is "Live Courageously." And it is so hard, especially when you're younger, to live in such a way that perhaps sometimes go against the norm. Sometimes you're going uphill. Sometimes you're doing things when everyone says you can't, or maybe it's out of the box and no one sees a vision that you see. So I think that question, "Live Courageously," means that sometimes the choices and actions that we decide to take don't always match what society views as norms. Um, and however, I think the definition for me anyway includes that the courageous action that I'm talking about is the right action, right? You're doing what's right. And sometimes doing what's right is not easy, especially in today's world where trends come and go. And just because we want to feel accepted, we just go along with trends, or we want to feel comfortable. So live courageously is a characteristic that I think that at various times in our lives, we probably need to step up and live courageously. I mean, it's not like every day is a battle. Maybe it is for some, but especially out in wartime. But man, I love what you're doing, and I love the title. So live courageously. It means sometimes you got to step up.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and it's a reminder. When I decided to do the show, it was because I've been blessed with knowing so many courageous people, and I just felt like it was a chance to kind of put them and have them share their stories about how they've stepped up and how they're stepping up in life to make a difference. And the feeling I get from all the things you do, you've kind of done that throughout your life, both as in the military, both in corporate stuff and nonprofit work, as well as now as a pastor, as a chaplain. Tell us that journey, Joe. Where did you grow up? How did you go on that journey? Because you've obviously made some courageous choices to be who you are and not go along with the societal trends, no matter what they were.
Yeah, I kind of like sharing this a little bit because growing up in Texas, as you see, my last name is Ramirez. I grew up, from a Mexican family, third generation. And actually, my real legal first name is Norman. And the story behind that is that my parents did not want to, they wanted to assimilate me into, American culture, which meant also not teaching me Spanish. There was a stigma in Texas that if you had an accent, that you weren't viewed as positively as most. I'm trying to be polite here, politically correct. And I never liked that name, Norm. My middle name is Joe, and the first opportunity I had as an adult to change that name, and there's a story behind that too. I was in a bar drinking away and met a girl, and she asked me my name, and I said my name is Joe, and that was in 1996, and the rest, is history, sort of thing. But yeah, growing up, Mexican, named Norman, brown guy in Texas, I felt uncomfortable for most of my life. And when I got a girl pregnant, after being in a band for a couple of years, doing a little bit of a circuit in Austin and San Antonio, and up and in between, kind of fun life. I don't remember a lot of it, but just from drinking and using a lot. And I'm in recovery. We can get to that at some point. But I joined the Marine Corps because I actually needed a job. I mean, really. And my dad, who was 21 years in the Air Force, said to me when he knew that I was, I had a decision to make because I was about to become a father. He said, I know you're considering joining the military, but whatever you do, do not join the Marine Corps. And what do we do? We want to prove something. I was a rebel. I still am a little bit. And I joined the Marine Corps. And my dad didn't think I was going to really make it because, I was kind of irresponsible, late a lot, sometimes non-committal, past due bills. I think I had a warrant for my arrest. All kinds of things. But there was something about that uniform, and you hear it a lot by Marines. There's something about that uniform. There's something about going in first. There's something about being tough and all that other stuff that it's a bit of a challenge. And I actually managed the Marine Corps quite easily because my dad was so hard on me because he was Air Force. He didn't have a dad. He was on his own at 15 years old. To me, he's one of my heroes, Vietnam veteran, Agent Orange, that sort of thing. But he wasn't the most, how should I say, warm father growing up. But it actually was, that was an advantage that I have in the Marine Corps because, while they're yelling at us in boot camp, in the chow line or making us do extra push-ups or whatever they're doing, in my mind, I'm laughing. I'm like, this is like, you guys are like, this is an act, and while other guys are, breaking down, wetting their bed so they can get kicked out or getting injured on purpose, that sort of thing. I just absolutely enjoy the Marine Corps. It's an experience I never regretted. I'm glad to have that brotherhood. I'm at the American Legion right now, so I really enjoy being a veteran. But the short answer to your question was why I joined the Marine Corps was I needed a job. And I was just smart enough to be able to make the test score to become military police, which is something I wanted to do. And I'm telling you, just even back then, as you mentioned earlier, I'm a pastor. But even back then, although I didn't think that God cared about me, I was already thinking that God was actually there when I look back at it, because I shouldn't have even have made it in the Marine Corps in the beginning, because my system was so full of drugs that all those tests that they give you to see if you got any of that system, somehow I made it through. And I just barely made it enough to get clean, to stay in there and to start having a career there. And I was first stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, went to 29 Palms. A desert storm hit, and I was on the tarmac twice. But I would say this, that out of everything that I wish I could have done in the Marine Corps, I wish I'd have gone to combat. But they held us back because, as you mentioned, I was in law enforcement, and they needed certain amount of law enforcement back at the base to watch over things or be a part of, the security out there. But I really wish I would have gone. And I don't know if anyone has told you this, but we're the country. We hadn't been to war, had a major conflict since Vietnam. The country was terrified of Saddam Hussein using gas, chemical weapons. So I was in the gas chamber like every 3 months. It's like,
Wow.
They would put us in the gas chamber, put on those tablets, put on our gear, take our gear off, training us up. And I ended up not going, but I learned how to use a face mask. I mean, a gas mask. But I married that girl that I that got pregnant, and that didn't last. Even a normal relationship, it's the military is very hard, especially the Marine Corps. So
my involvement, which kind of one of the things that why I do what I do with the American Legion, it was I had the opportunity as a producer to do some training videos with the U.S. Marine Corps.
Well, that's right.
And I went down to Pendleton and Quantico, and that was my first time really, up close and personal with the military, because my dad was in the Army, but he died when I was 4. So I didn't really know anything about the military. And I was kind of an anti-military guy when I was a teenager and all that. So going to that, doing those training videos for the Marine Corps introduced me to the Marines. And I met some of the best people I'd ever met in my life. And it impressed me with the leadership and the skills and the attitude that was being, promoted within it. I walked away from that experience feeling, what can I do? How can I serve? How can I give back? I can't be a Marine, but what else can I do? So that's kind of how I got involved in veteran support stuff. So it was that opportunity that opened the door for me. And I'm thankful and grateful that I had that opportunity so I could do what I do today.
Well, the military need people like you who've got a sense of connection and cause. Otherwise, we're kind of just on our own. And for a lot of different reasons, and depending on your calling, we've got to carry out legacy so that we learn from the past, prevent stuff from the future, and then when stuff does happen, like conflict, we know how to handle it.
Well, you opened up a door on a question. So you're in the Marine Corps for 8 years. You're military police. Obviously, you talked about your younger life when you were kind of like, a pretty wild out there musician, doing drugs, drinking too much. But then you're living a life of being clean and sober. And how did that happen? When did that happen? And what was that thing? Because you introduced that into the conversation. So I'd love to hear.
Yeah, and I'm not shy about it at all. Some people say, hey, do you mind if I mention that, or whatever this case may be? I think that one of the best things that we could do for one another in society, and it's not for everybody, is to share your story, your testimony, as we would say in the recovery meetings, your experience, strength, and hope. And even the bad experience you share so that people can hopefully feel like they can avoid something, or as they're going through something, they maybe have some information that'll help them. But really, it's just really odd. When I got out of the military, I was at Camp Pendleton. I was an investigator by then out there. That was a really fun tour there. I had met a woman out here in Los Angeles. I'm not with her, but today, but I met her, and that was the reason why I got out of the Marine Corps out here in LA and moved in with her in Los Angeles. But I kind of started having my own little PTSD. It's like really weird. I was in Okinawa. I was in Korea, 29 Palms, as I said, Pendleton. I've been through some special training, and I've been put through a lot of different types of physical confrontations, altercations, being in the Marine Corps, having to take people down, that sort of thing. And I think when I got out, and the therapist thought it was because I lost that sense of security with the Marine Corps, but other therapists had other theories. But I started having like severe panic attacks. In fact, my first panic attack I had, I'm wearing a gun and belt and a badge and a uniform out of Camp Pendleton. And I just started having these episodes. And so I would try to drink myself to calm this. And at some point, it stopped working. No matter how much I drank, it didn't work. In fact, it just made things worse. The very next day, I had a hangover. I started making really dumb decisions, all kinds of silly stuff like drinking and driving. Had my first DUI while I was in the military. So I went to go see a therapist at the VA. And here's the thing about the VA. VA gets a lot of a bad, reputation or bad rap, and they deserve a lot of that criticism. But the doctors I had were great. And also, if anyone's watching this, I think this is something to be said, to do something courageously. For me, I didn't feel like at first I was getting the proper care, but I pushed. I said, I'll speak to your boss, or I'll speak to the next director, or I'll speak to the next doctor, that sort of thing. We don't have to accept status quo. And I got good care out of the VA because of just insisting that I, find the right care. But I ran into this doctor, and he said to me, Joe, do you know what day it is today? I said, okay, it's Tuesday, or whatever it was. Do you know what time it is? Yeah, so okay. Count backwards from 10 to 1. I did. He goes, you're not crazy. What you need is some serious counseling. And because I was so impressed with him, when we went into the program, I asked if that doctor was a part of the program, which he was, Dr. Quintanar. He never returns my calls because I want to thank him for saving my life. But I think he does that to keep that separation between doctor and patient, and then patient moving on. And he kind of told me he would do that. But I just want to thank him so much, because some of these doctors probably don't realize, or probably hear the stories that aren't success. I actually don't know this, but just my instinct. I just feel like I want to thank him, man, because I owe him my life in a lot of ways, because he said this. So I went to a session, and he says, Joe, so how's it going? I said, well, I got drunk last night. After about the third time he's saying that, he goes, I can't see you anymore unless you get sober. There's no way. I can't help you. Stop it. Otherwise, I'm stopping it, And I had so much trust in him. I had so much faith in him that he was able to help me get out of these panic attacks. By then I was taking, Valium and all kinds of weird stuff. And it just messed with my head, and I wanted to get off that stuff. So my journey of recovery started then. And I've had some slips here and there. I'm 10 years sober now, but really he started that journey. And here's what I learned. I learned that, you don't really need that in your system to have a good time, to live a full life, to do things. You've heard this, I'm sure, liquid courage. You don't need any of that. It is a process to be able to get out of that mindset, because that's what we've been used to since we were 14, 13, whenever we first started drinking. But once you start transitioning over to a life of clean and sober, and there's so many people around here, and also Los Angeles has some of the best recovery out here. By the time I was getting recovery in the late 90s, it was actually a trend. So, celebrities were getting sober and they were being public about it. Politicians were, and, so I felt like I was part of the cool club. And by the way, some of these meetings, I mean, you're sitting next to very successful people. You'd recognize them in movies and stuff like that. So that was kind of inspiring too. It's sort of like, wow, if this very, very famous boxer, is saying, look, this is saving me. And a guy like me, seeing a guy being humble like that, I'm like, well, you know what? I can be humble too, or at least try. So I know a little tangent here, but I really believe that, without that doctor from the VA and me getting recovery, that I would have the life that I have now, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit about some of the things I've done and some of the things I'm doing now, because I got plenty to do, just like you.
Yeah. Well, use that to pivot. I'm going to put up this is a book you wrote called Bounce Back with Faith, and it's on Amazon. And the subtitle is "We're Designed to Bounce Back." So that book, when did you write that? And I'm assuming that is part of your story that you shared in that book. Why did you write it? When did you write it? And what was the message of that book? And what message will people take if they pick that up?
Well, simply this: if you could put it back up, and I'll talk. If you look at that red highlight, is that we are designed to bounce back, and you can take it off now. That was sort of the core principle or reason or drive behind that book, because I had felt like, after having my little run-in with the law, the drugs and alcohol, the struggle and anxiety disorder, maybe it was a little PTSD, that after being through all that and then get to a comfortable state to be able to do all kinds of really cool things, I felt like I strongly believe that we are all designed to bounce back. We are designed this way. And I think it's a very important message, because a lot of people feel like they'll never get out of their rut, or they'll never achieve their dreams. And there's a lot to that too. Sometimes you're pursuing the wrong dream. But so that's what it was, man. We are designed. Well, some people say that, hey, we're born this way. And sometimes there could be a negative connotation with that. But it's also the other way around. I strongly believe that we're also designed to bounce back. And so that's where that came from. And it was a journey from, not walking in faith to walking in faith and using some of the lessons that are taught to us in our faith to bounce back. And they're all basic principles. It really, really is sort of like, I'll give you one of the first ones. Well, I think all of us would understand or see in these recovery programs, we got to admit we have a problem. Well, okay. You admit. Sometimes we feel it, and it's like, I don't even have to admit it. I feel it, But there's a second part to that, and that is that, we as a human race really don't have as much as power as we think we have, right? In other words, there must be something bigger and greater out there than us. And I think that if anything that the pandemic taught us was that, I mean, my goodness, worldwide, we're scrambling to get a vaccine or, contain this. I mean, as smart as we think we are, we really had a rough time for a couple of years trying to stay safe, stay healthy, not die. So my point being is that there's something out there in my belief system, and mine is God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, that there's something bigger and greater than us. Okay, so now you have that. Can we tap into this greater being, greater power, higher power? Can we tap into that or connect with that in such a way that we can form a relationship, and then also now have a relationship such that helps us and gets us through whatever we need to get through. And also when we're feeling like we can't go any further, like, it's sort of like, you're benching 225 pounds. Like I know you do. I think you do like 245 or something like that. But can you do that extra rep, sort of thing. And I think that's where that higher power, that my Lord and Savior, that's where that extra power comes from, is something higher and bigger than ourselves. And I think I'm kind of messing it up a bit, but that is the beginning of, needing that help to get over whatever crap, you need to get over. Because a lot of us have like weird addictions or weird obsessions, that sort of thing. And sometimes we can't do it on our own. But we're designed to reach out.
It's just like I always say, because I say God had a bigger plan for my life than I had for my own, right? And, I grew up and I dropped out of high school when I was 15, and my goal was survival. I never, ever envisioned the life I live or what I do and work in the film industry and all this stuff. It was never on my agenda, or never in my wildest dreams could I ever imagine that I do what I do now, and you realize you put in your effort, you do what you do, but somehow there's a bigger plan. And like you said, there is that beyond you, that higher power, that ability. And it's kind of led me to where I have a life today. And so, I mean, that's something to understand that we don't have all the answers ourselves individually. We just don't,
Yeah, you're saying it better than I, because that was the second part to that I think has to be mentioned, that sometimes what we think our plan is not our plan, and once we realize that, and like you said, you've got like, wow, God had a different plan for me. We can also get into a space of gratitude, man. It's
100%.
Like, whoa, this is like, I thought I was going over there, but I'm over here, and wow, this is so much better over here, sort of thing.
Well, and that thing of gratitude, I mean, I've made it for years since I've kind of adopted that. Every day I have a gratitude journal that I write things that I'm grateful for. And, it's, to me, it's one of the most powerful gifts in my life, because I think to wake up every day, and, I've been through struggles, I've been through financial struggles and, personal struggles, and just like all of us, we're human. But even in the middle of your hardest times, even in the middle of your worst times, looking at what you're grateful for just gives you a strength. It just gives you a strength to keep going. And it gives you a strength to appreciate what you got, even if it isn't everything you want. You still got it. You know what I mean?
That's right. And what you're also saying too is, like, no matter what's going on, that we can have a sense of peace with that. Because sometimes I also think that a lot of us, we just want peace. We just want to feel comfortable in our own skin, or comfortable with whatever is going on, which is not easy, especially in a world where we're being pulled in all these different directions. So, yeah, this is good stuff.
100%. Well, now let's keep going with your story. I want to, because you got so much of what you're doing. And so let's go into the, the stuff with the American Legion, a pastor, you're a chaplain over there at Pacific Palisades Post 283. Tell us a little bit about that. Share that. Of course, we're going to go into Revive LA, and I want to go into your vet stream too. But
let me briefly make sure that I get into what happened when I got out of the Marine Corps, because I think this is also part of the journey, and that is and why I got into the American Legion. Since I was in law enforcement, I started a security company even before I got out of the military. And I had a few different versions of it, but the short end of it was that I sold my company in 2015. I had 500 plus employees, offices from here all the way to Chicago. And I was on a plane once a week. It was such a fun life. while at the same time it was extremely stressful. I was always worried about money, always worried about getting sued, but it was time for me to sell it. And so when I sold my company, my father-in-law had started coming to the American Legion because he's an Air Force veteran. And they were trying to figure out a way to get me a part of leadership. And the American Legion, some people have been around quite a bit, and it's almost like an unwritten rule.
Old timers.
Right, yeah. But to his credit, Jerry Romano, who's now the department commander, say, hey, I can figure out a way to get you, on the board. And that was to be a chaplain, because he knew by then my wife and I had already started a church, Revive LA. And I'll never forget this. This is really kind of funny. So I went to my first meeting, and I just sold my company. So here I am thinking like, oh, everyone should just listen to me, and just drop what they're doing when I say something. Cause that's how it is. By the time you've been doing business 20 years, there's a certain type of respect that you just kind of develop over time. It doesn't happen overnight, whatever. And I remember I said, I want to put in motion to do whatever. And they said, oh, chaplains don't have any voting rights. And I'm like, that was like my first indication, like, okay, you're starting over. And then I said, okay, well, I'll pray about it then. But I was so, I got to tell you, one of the most, experiences that I've ever had in my life that I can really cherish, and just so glad I did it, was actually the chaplaincy here at the American Legion. Because, if you look at the preamble, it says for God and country. And I think, probably would agree with this, that we've kind of lost that a little bit in our country. Not that I need to be preaching, now that I need to convert people who don't want to be converted. But I do put myself out there that, hey, this is a great life, having a relationship with God. I took the job seriously with my prayers, with helping people. We started a chapel here on Sundays. I just finished it a few hours ago. Chapel Sundays. You have a chapel at every military base. You have a chapel in the hospitals, even in Santa Monica. I went to St. John's to visit Comrade Jay McCann. There was a chapel there. So this is real, and people do connect with God in a way that they gather on a Sunday, and we provide that. I ended up starting Revive LA a few years ago, when the church that I was at, and we're still affiliated with them, they were more on the side of traditional. They were more on the side of, how they've been doing stuff for hundreds of years, Lutheran denomination. And I just couldn't relate to it. After a while, I felt like we need to get out into the mission field. We need to go tell people. We need to go out and meet people versus trying to get people to come to us. And that's why we started Revive LA. Now, Revive LA really started with just Revive. But I noticed that the other churches were adding LA to it as a way of distinguishing from other parts of the country, as a way of distinguishing. But I've been kind of criticized, by some religious leaders, actually. But Revive LA, who do you think you are? You're going to revive all of Los Angeles? I'm like, it's just a name. I mean, we're Revive and we're in Los Angeles. That's where it came from. But it sounds like Revive LA. Well, you're only like 20 to 50 people. Who do you think you are? So, and that's that's the world we live in, right? We have a tendency to criticize each other and
way too much.
Yeah. And, but I got to tell you, Revive LA, our mission statement is to cultivate and rekindle a love for God and people, plain and simple. So if you want to put it in just a few words, love God, love people. I don't care what background you have, what culture you're from, or if you're religious or you're not religious, come hang out with us, hear a few songs, hear a message, and that's what you get. You need some help spiritually, we'd like to be there for you. So that's what we're about, and it's worked really well. And I think we've seen hundreds of people go through our little church service.
Well, I was, blessed to attend one of your services that you did over at in Pacific Palisades at after the Afghanistan exit, and you had some veterans there who were involved, who spoke and everything. And that was the first time I saw you actually in that light, where you and your your wife and everything got up and pastored, but also sang and, led people in service. And, that message of, God and love. I mean, you just got a feeling that, you were there for the people, that you were there to share love and lift people up, and people need it. And that's kind of what I saw you doing. And then I got to see you, of course, another time when you did it in Santa Monica at a little cafe, and you tried to help the cafe by bringing people to the cafe. And once again, doing a service at the cafe and performing and everything. And, once again, you were touching people's lives. And that's, the spirit of Revive LA. That's what.
And you know what? We may go back there and do that again. I'll let you know.
Let me know.
We were just talking about that today because our keyboard player, he goes to open mic there on Friday night. And so it just, I don't know if you know the story behind the owner there, but, she was going through really rough times, as most businesses were during the pandemic.
Right? Yeah. Huh?
Yeah. And she had said that someone had been coming around and talking to her about God, having some sort of faith, because she was just not really into it. But a lot of times people sometimes get to a point like, okay, I don't know where else to go. Nothing's working. No drugs is working. No relationships are working. Nothing's working. I mean, what else is there? And that's why I always say, like, well, what else do you have to lose? I mean, give it a shot. Just try it, sort of thing. And I think we caught her at those moments, and she was almost embracing having some sort of spiritual event out there. And so, yeah, we want to do that again. Sorry.
You also do some. Here's a picture. You do some at the beach as well. Here's you and your wife and the band on a cold California day. It does get cold here.
I'm really impressed with your little media here. But yeah, that's Easter morning, and my goodness, God's so great. First, every time that we've set up there, we don't get a permit or anything like that, and that's probably not good on my part. I'm like, come on, we're just out there. We're only out there 30 minutes. Come on.
Is that the rebel still in you, brother?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know. I wish I need to pray about that. But the park ranger comes by and I think someone called on us and says, hey, you got to shut down. I'm like, I'm not shutting down. And he says, well, you're going to get a ticket. I'm like, well, give me a ticket. I'm not shutting down. Right. So I get a ticket. So I kind of messed with my head for a little bit. But it's just so interesting. And I got to tell you, this has happened like 2 or 3 years in a row where we get like front page coverage. In fact, we were on I think we were on KCAL. Huh. And I think like 30 people showed up that Easter morning. But there were a few other legitimate services going on with permits and everything that had a couple hundred people, bands, a bunch of pastors. We just show up, have this little small group. And for whatever reason, it's happened almost 2 or 3 years in a row that we just get this big coverage. And I'll get calls and I got it. Well, I was in USA. Was it USA Today? I think I was in USA Today right when the pandemic ended, or the time that we could start having services again. For whatever reason, that beach service gets a lot of attention, and you know what? So be it. I'm okay with that.
Well, that's good. Well, one of these days, I got to introduce you to a dear brother of mine. His name he's a pastor too, Rudy Gonzalez, and he was a Force Recon Marine.
Oh, nice.
And he's out in Temecula now, and him and his family have a mission ministry called CERT Ministry, and they go out and they rescue children from sex traffickers, and they've been doing it for years.
Wow.
Just one of the most amazing people I know in my life, and also his family. But I'm going to have to connect you guys at some point because I think you'd both appreciate each other on so many different levels.
Very cool.
I'll definitely do that. Tell me a little. I'm going to pivot a little so I make sure I cover it, and then I can pivot back. But I'd love to cover your the stuff that you're doing in media, because like I said, when I met you, you had the theater over there, you had some film screenings over there, and then we had talked about the flag and putting it up on your VetStream TV channel, streaming channel, and here's just some pictures of the channel, as well as also on YouTube where people can connect with VetStream TV. But why don't you tell us a little bit about that endeavor that you created with VetStream TV? What was the purpose of it, how people can connect with it, and what you're doing in the world with that right now?
Well, I wish I could spend a lot more time with Veteran TV because I actually think that financially it'll give me probably my biggest return yet. It seems like there are other parts of my life that are really pulling me, um, but we've been managing it, maintaining it, and we're still active. But it's another spiritual situation. I was looking to put together a faith-based streaming channel. There's already a few out there, but I wanted to put together a faith-based streaming channel. And I called a couple of film festivals, Christian film festivals, and I reached this gal up in New Jersey named LaVon. She's one of our partners at VetStream, and she's a college professor. She's a journalist. She's got some credentials of her own. And I said, I'd like to have, or how can I make a deal with you with some of the content that you're getting? We can create the streaming channel, and perhaps you can participate, be a partner of it. And we had a great conversation. We got along well. We're two very different personalities. She's very orderly, organized, and I'm just like all over the place. And I said to her, eventually, I'd like to do a streaming channel where it's just like veteran related content. And she said, Joe, you got to do that first because there's already faith-based channels out there. Do this one first. And I thought about it for about 5 minutes, and I said, "You're right." And so that's how we were born. And as you probably know this.
And when was that, Joe? How long ago?
I want to say 2016, 2017.
Okay.
But we've had a sort of a new life in the last year and a half. Because as you probably know, the media is the industry, technology is just changing so fast. I mean, even a year is like, what 10 years were, back in the day, when you had normal type broadcasting. But when I first started out, the back end hosting was like, I think I was spending $2,000 a month. I was licensing films. I was charging $3.99, and you need a lot of that in order for the profit or the revenue to catch up with the expenses. And to be honest, I just got exhausted with that formula, and we took a pause. And then what we redid was to it wasn't even a relaunch because we never really stopped, but we changed our model to absolutely free. Which means most of the content we have out there we don't pay for, and there is plenty of content out there that people are willing to just, hey, show my content, and if anything comes out of it, maybe we'll give you a cut, or we don't sign strong contracts. I mean, if someone got discovered because of you were on our channel, then we're happy for that. But we were having our first film festival in November, and so content's already coming in on that. I've got 100,000 plus subscribers that I have. I think we have probably 25 to 50,000 views a month, or unique visits a month. So we're getting there.
Where is the film festival going to be held, or is it online?
Well,
tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's tentatively scheduled here at the American Legion in the Palisades. Our second choice, or another choice we have, is Patriotic Hall, Bob Hope Patriotic Hall, and you and I talked about that already. The pros and cons of that, and I'm also thinking about the USS Iowa. But I kind of like it here where I'm at right now, Ronald Reagan Palisades both, because it's a small town. We got a big room, all the media, all the audio's here. Never done it here before. I don't know. Since it's new, maybe it'll have a different excitement. But I have a ways to go before we make that final determination. Well, actually, a couple more months, but otherwise it'll be too late. But to come full circle with the VetStream TV, one thing that I really grew a passion for is, and again, I think you and I talked about this a lot, was for the Vietnam veterans. And it was because I'll never forget, and I never will forget this. Before I thought I was going to Saudi Arabia, We were all scared. The nation was scared, but they were also unified. And they, there was kind of like this unwritten conversation out there, that was basically this: we are not going to treat the veterans going into conflict, when they come back, like the way we treated the Vietnam veterans. And I never forgot that. And there was so much care, or so much precaution, that was put into how we did military exercises, how we got treated, all kinds of things, because of because of what the Vietnam veterans went through. And I didn't really even realize, the depth of all of this. And even in as close as home, because my dad was a Vietnam veteran and actually had Agent Orange and had to go through his own process, that I created this passion and just real dedication to. And so I got another film coming out. It's called 10 Badass Things That You Didn't Know About Vietnam Veterans. And I can't wait for that to come out, because there are certain things that we took for granted, but the military, the Vietnam vets, kind of sacrifice, their comfort, their whatever it was. So yeah. So now we have Vetstream TV, and it's and the other thing too is that we're also trying to capture families. So I got this really great, talented woman there, Maria Mendez, who does makeovers for military veterans who are on hard times. They can't redo an office. They can't redo their kitchen. She actually did a women's veterans 16 apartment type facility. Did a complete makeover, and so she's sort of like our HGTV of Vetstream TV. And I just take note of her, because she's gonna make it someday, and we'll be like, "Hey, Maria, don't forget us. Can I go on your show?" That sort of thing. When we did a grand opening here, she did she was one of our MCs, and she's going to be one of the hosts, or one of the guests, I believe, for our channel. I mean, for our film festival.
Very cool. Very cool. What else is going on for you? What else would you like to touch, share with the audience, and share about what you're doing going forward at this point?
Well, I'd like to put out there, because I'm just now kind of going through it. So I had turned over my chaplaincy role over to a really great guy. He's a doctor in counseling. He's a 23-year veteran in the Navy. He was a chaplain in the Navy. He's a pastor of several churches. So he's our new chaplain here at the Post, Ronald Reagan Palisades Post. But the reason why I mention that is because I've been selected for, or voted for, or elected to be the first vice commander here at the Post. So it's taken on a little bit of a larger responsibility and larger role. And what I've learned about that, it's only been a couple of weeks, but last night I went to my first event where I sat with Gary Luttrell and a Medal of Honor recipient and a foundation tribute to valor. And so we were part of, because we gave him a grant, or gave his organization a grant. So I presented that big giant check, and I hung around at a pretty nice place in Brentwood for about 4 hours. I couldn't get out of my seat. And that's really tough for me, because I love moving around. But so it looks like I'm going to be a little bit more interactive with the public when it comes to veteran cause, veteran support organizations, and doing what I can to raise awareness. So it's a different role lately. And then along those lines, I didn't mention this, but you'll soon hear about it, is that we're doing our first spirit hike. So it's a hike that we're doing in September. And we're flying out Jessica Lynch. I don't know if you heard of her. She was a POW out of Iraq, one of the first women POWs.
Who was wounded during that, right?
What's that?
She was one of the first ones wounded or something, or
yeah. I should probably learn more about her story. But
I have a vague remembrance of that story. But yes.
Yeah. Well, the nation kind of like, oh my gosh, there was a woman POW, and they were kind of probably using her as a Yeah, and they made a movie out of her, out of the
Right,
story,
right.
and she's experienced a lot of trauma. So she's going to be our guest speaker, and we'll be filming that. But we're going to be doing a hike where we're going to gather veterans and people from the community together, and so that'll be in September. So yeah, I want to make sure I mention that.
And just with that, for people who don't know, and obviously some of my audience knows and some don't, but I'm a son of the Legion, which means I was able to join the Post 43 in Hollywood because my dad was in the U.S. Army. So what is the Legion, and who can join it, for people who are not familiar with how they could get involved with something like the American Legion?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it, because already in less than a week and a half, I've been asked to speak right on the fly, and usually I'm okay with speaking on the fly. I like hearing myself talk, but in this particular role, I'm learning that there are things that that probably should be mentioned, and that was one of them. Even last night, I'm like, okay, a lot of people don't know who the American Legion is. I actually didn't know.
Right.
All right, and it's important that very important that people know it's the largest veteran organization, nonprofit in the country. Millions, even though there's a down turn on the membership, there's millions of members. That was chartered and started in 1919, and there's posts. I guess you could call them chapters, but posts all throughout the country. And we just happen to be the one in Pacific Palisades. Now, the purpose of the American Legion, and they've got 4 pillars: Americanism, and they have, veterans. But really, it's veteran support, and it can look different. Support is in several different ways. It's pointing people to get proper treatment, proper care, maybe some training for a job, camaraderie, just hanging out. But I do think, though, that the American Legion is examining itself to how it can reach the next generation of veterans, since it's not the same. What Vietnam veterans and World War II people were interested, or those veterans interested in at those particular times, is not what the veterans of today are interested in, and I mean specifically like gaming. They just, I think, passed a resolution. It's going to be in the Constitution that gaming is going to be part of our. And I think have you interviewed Andre yet?
Andre Andrews?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good friend. Matter of fact, he took me and my daughter horseback riding. I went out to his Warrior Road farm.
Yeah.
And
So,
we
have
went
you interviewed him
a couple weeks ago? Yeah.
Have you interviewed him?
Oh yeah, I did interview him. He was.
Oh, okay. Because he's a hard guy to pin down too.
Oh yes, he is. He's very well. He works nonstop between the horses, the equestrian nonprofit he does, being part of your post, and then of course he works on a legal program that provides legal services to veterans. So
but
he's all over the place, and a great guy.
Yeah, he ushered in this whole gaming thing, and
not surprised.
Yeah, so again, I mean, that's just an example of a veteran interest that didn't exist probably not even 5 years ago, or maybe so, we just didn't see it. So yeah, the American Legion, large organization, nonprofit for veterans in the country, is looking for ways to usher in the new generation and how we can support one another.
Excellent. And once again, obviously all veterans can join it. It's an organization for veterans, but Sons of the Legion can join if their parents were in the military, and then there's an auxiliary as well that people can join, correct? So those are the different ways that you can be involved with the American Legion.
Yeah, I feel like the auxiliary doesn't get the attention that it deserves. So it's going to be one of my next sort of purposes, I guess, or goals, is to raise awareness for the auxiliary, because who are usually wives or daughters of veterans, and they're women. But I really like how they participate, because they do stuff like veterans don't really want to do, like set up tables or do something decorative or participate in like 4th of July, that sort of thing.
Family events, things like that. Yeah, which are all important stuff for sure.
And the Suns, oh my gosh, they've always, at least here at our post, they're one of the stronger entities of the American Legion because they are getting together actually more from what I see out of sense of appreciation, where the veterans, there's a sense of call, there's a sense of giving back, or maybe you need help, sort of
Right.
thing. The Suns have a different attitude, and as a result, it kind of all fits well together, here at the American Legion.
Well, as we wrap the show up, I think, we covered a lot. We covered, your book. People can check out your book online on Amazon, obviously, VetStream TV on YouTube, VetStream TV on the internet. If people want to get involved, watch the content, share content. If you have content to reach out to you, obviously, if they can join the American Legion Post 283, if they're in that area and want to become part of what you're doing out there. So there's a lot of ways. How do people contact you, and what kind of takeaway message would you like to give people who've watched the show today and heard all the things that you've done? Because I think you're a good example of someone who's lived a courageous life, someone who's lived a life of service and contribution, and then gratitude. And I think those are all the kind of things that we need more of in the world today. And you're a good example of that. So yeah, take away to close, man, and share whatever.
Yeah. So one way to get hold of me, really easy, is joe@revivela.net. Super simple, joe@revivela.net. I would say that maybe a little takeaway, and I learned this in the last 7 years, is that I do think that life is a series of restarts, or especially nowadays where it used to be probably in our generation, you get a job at 7-Up or the post office, you retire 30 years later, 25 years, and that's it. Nowadays, jobs aren't lasting very long. Things move quicker. Companies close down faster. You don't see people staying in jobs very long. For a lot of those reasons, I've seen and discovered, even on my own, that we do have to reinvent ourselves, every so often. And it could be a very frustrating time or disappointing time for us, or it could be just like super fun, like, hey, what have I always wanted to do? Or could I try something that I never have tried? And now more than ever, because of the internet, there's a lot of cutting out of the middleman. So I started VetStream TV. I don't need to go to a major studio. We can create our own content. I can create my own followers, my own viewers. I can create my own subscription base. I can get sponsors all day long. I don't need any of that. That's just one example. Same thing with the church or Revive LA. I don't need to belong to any denomination. I could actually give sermons or messages or encouraging things, which I do on social media. So now more than ever, right, John? I mean, come on now, somebody.
Yep, that's right.
Now more than ever, we can live courageously.
That's right.
It's in front of us, but it does take a little bit of, I guess, encouraging one another to do that. So, and you're doing that by interviewing people like such as myself, and you're doing it on your own. You have your own podcast. I mean, I saw that you had Sorbo. What's his name?
Evan Sorbo.
Yeah, and I've ran into him here and there. So yeah, don't forget about the little people, John.
Hey, we are the little people, man. So I can never forget you, brother, or anybody, because I know where I came from, and my roots will always be who I am. So
you're awesome, man.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate you. Appreciate what you're doing. Anybody who wants to, can or will support VetStream TV, support Revive LA, be part of that. Reach out to Joe, and thank you very much for being part of this. I really appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, and I look forward to seeing you at some of these events that we belong to.
100%. See you there.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed the show and was inspired by the message of Joe Ramirez. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you can go here. These are where you can reach it. Live Courageously with John Duffy. Join me every Sunday at 2 p.m. to meet other incredible guests And once again, may you make your life a masterpiece, and God bless.